The first thing we're going to get into is a housing allowance, because for me, this is a lot more common than the parsonage allowance. Um, but one of the biggest mistakes that I see when it comes to housing allowance is failing to formally designate the housing allowance before the payment of the housing allowance. If a designated housing allowance is not approved in advance, officially documented, and used for qualified housing expenses, it becomes taxable. So, and that is something that is done on the income tax return. It is not something like you just get the, I usually will ask for the board minutes approving the housing allowance, because it'll have the date that the board met to discuss that housing allowance and what the housing allowance was that was passed. Um, but sometimes I've received pushback in the past from some churches, because I'm not a member of that church, and they'll often have a requirement that only church members can see the board minutes. So what I have accepted in the past is a written confirmation of the housing allowance and the date that the board met and approved it. And I generally prefer to get that from like maybe the church secretary or somebody other than the pastor, just for that segregation of duties. Because it'd be kind of like my employee reporting to the payroll company that they got a raise. But if I was, and as the payroll company for other businesses, I don't put those in without verifying that the raise actually did happen, and the housing allowance and the approval of the housing allowance is similar to that. I want to get that information from either directly from the board, and if that's not possible, from the church secretary. We sometimes, if the clergy member is our main point of contact, we'll accept it from them. Um, and getting an excerpt of the board minutes is also acceptable. You just want something to cover yourself, just to make sure that you've got something in writing and can cover yourself. Because say the salary is 25,000 and the housing allowance is 55,000, but you need something in writing that has that. Because if you don't have that, and you know then if you don't have something in writing, and like if somebody just called you and said, hey, the salary and the housing allowance is 25 and 55, and you put it in as 25 for the salary and 55 for the housing, but it was really supposed to be 55 for the salary and 25 for the housing, you've got nothing to back up why you did what you did. And in general, I like to get things in writing all the time.